The elite Labour group who propelled Keir Starmer to power smeared journalists using a report that contained false allegations. This is the most disgusting, shameless attack on the free press, on free speech, and on our democracy in modern British politics, with the stench once again wafting all the way to Downing Street. Labour Together, the elite Labour group that propelled Keir Starmer to Labour leader and funded over 100 MPs or so, hired a US firm in what smells like a revenge hit after the Sunday Times revealed Labour Together's undeclared £730,000 donation scandal. That expose by the Times led to Labour Together being hit with 20 breaches of election law, a fine from the Electoral Commission, and serious questions about Morgan McSweeney, Starmer's now former Chief of Staff, who only quit last week. Labour Together said that it proactively raised concerns about its own reporting of donations to the Electoral Commission in 2020, and has since the findings have been made sure it's now compliant with all regulations. According to the Times, this top Labour group paid $36,000 for the US firm to conduct this report. It resulted in a 58-page dossier called Operation Cannon, which the journalists say was stuffed full of baseless smears and fake news. They refuted them as just doing their job, of course. Times reporter Gabriel Pogron's Jewish faith was dragged into all of this. His royal reporting was branded destabilising to the country, and seemingly without a shred of evidence, they linked this poor journalist to, guess what? Russia. Heard that a few times, haven't we? All while, by the way, he was and remains sanctioned by Russia. You can't make it up, could you? They didn't consult a single cybersecurity expert to verify these claims. And it seems like the Russia angle was pushed to discredit this legitimate reporting. All of this happened around the same time as the Prime Minister making speeches a bit like this.
We're trying not just to defeat the Tories, but to defeat their entire way of doing politics. A mindset that seeks out any differences between the people of this country and, like weeds between the paving stones, will pull apart the cracks so ultimately they can divide and rule. I have to warn you, they will leave no stone unturned this year. Every opportunity for division will be exploited for political potential. That's a given. But do not doubt for a second that we're ready for it.
Yeah, talking about how bad the Tories were, right? While that was going on in his back door. If this were a Tory or a Reform government or any right-wing government, have no doubt these same leftist activists and politicians would be calling for a police probe and a criminal investigation. I'd say you couldn't make it up, the sheer hypocrisy at least. But many will agree Labour is now the party of double standards and sleaze. So who's really surprised to read and hear more of it?
There's nothing more important than keeping you and your loved ones safe online. With so many VPN options available, choosing the right one can be pretty daunting. And with their Valentine's Day sale, this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, is making the choice easier for GB News viewers. It's the easiest way to stay safe online, protect your money, and save big for less than £2 a month. Click the link in the video's description or scan the QR code today.
All right, let's get the thoughts of my panel. Labour councillor Sebastian Salix joining me, former Conservative advisor Laura McKevitz here, and businessman and activist Adam Brooks too. Adam, I'll start with you. When I saw this headline last night, my jaw dropped. As we put, a lot of us here, including people on this panel, we put ourselves out there, we try and report very difficult things to the public. These Times journalists were doing their job. They reported a massive donation scandal at Labour Together. And what it seems like has happened, and I'm not saying this is entirely the case because they refute these claims, what it seems has happened is like someone's gone, oh, we better do something about these lot. They're saying it was because they wanted to find in where this leak had gone. But either way, You then don't take a report that contains false allegations, fail to verify it, and then send it off to the press as an attack on two people doing their job.
This is an attempt to silence journalists. Journalists, you may not like them, you may like them, you may not like them. If they uncover wrongdoing, which they had done, they've done their job. Labour, for me, are becoming more and more sinister. It's like a sort of Gestapo group. I hope that doesn't offend anyone. A Gestapo group that must find something and shut it down. They do not want to be challenged. They do not want all their wrongdoings out in the open. And there is a question. Did Keir Starmer know about this? Did he authorise it? That is the questions that need to be asked. And I suspect his immediate answer is going to be, this did not come across my desk.
Sebastian, I'll come to you. The Labour Party, in one way or another, is being... Every week, there is a sleaze scandal. This one, I think, is an egregious attack. And this is, of course, Labour Together is not affiliated directly to the Labour Party, but it's funded hundreds of MPs in their election campaigns. So in some way, they're quite closely tied, including Morgan McSweeney, who's the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, worked for the Labour Together movement. Whatever's said here, this is a party that made itself out to be cleaner and purer than pure. You can't say that anymore, can you?
This is a really weird one, I've got to say. And look, I may be these days a Labour councillor, but I am by trade a journalist. And I would always defend the rights of journalists, as Adam says, to do their job, to investigate and to uncover stories like this one, which was worthwhile, and have a lot of respect for the work that Gabriel Pogron does and the team at the Times. Fantastic. Read them every day. Really essential to our democracy. What I'm still trying to figure out here is the basic facts. I mean, you've got a lot of different allegations flying around. I was drawn to a conversation between Josh Simons and Kevin Maguire at the Mirror, who spoke privately. And after that, Maguire rejected his claims that Simons shouldn't be a minister. So clearly he's managed to talk him down and to convince him that there was no wrongdoing here. Now, we don't know the details of that, but that I find very intriguing. The investigation that's going on now is into APCO, which is the firm that produced the report. Clearly, there are a lot of inaccuracies in that report.
Yeah.
Clearly, Gabriel Pogron is not an agent of Russia. We must remember that the last time the PRCA, the body that governs agencies like this, carried out an investigation, it was into Bell Pottinger, and we know what happened to them.
Yeah.
So I'll be watching that with a lot of interest, and I think that's probably the point where we get to see some real, irrefutable facts come out of this.
The thing that really caught me a little bit about this story, Lauren, was this Russia angle. We hear this all the time, and I said this last night, and I think it's exceptionally dangerous for our national security and for actual real threats of Russia when we constantly throw around, you're a Russian spy, you're paid off by the Russians to everyone and anyone, particularly when this report, it went to, the Times allege at least that it went to GCHQ. Yeah. They said, nah, we're not looking at that, that's a load of rubbish. They didn't bother to get a private cybersecurity firm to verify any of the claims. Yeah. So really, the basic due diligence wasn't even done before they thought to use it as a weapon.
This whole thing is fascinating to me. APCO may be a US firm, but it's got a massive London office. It's been operating here for years. And as I work in communications and government affairs, and any client that you have ever, at some point, is going to call you and say, I have an announcement coming up, I want to give it to a journalist, I am a large oil producer, I'm about to strip mine some beach in Suffolk to reel oil out, and your advice is, well, I probably wouldn't go to Joe Bloggs at the Mirror about that one, I might go somewhere else. That's about the extent of the intel you're giving about journalists. Is, if you are wanting a story to go in a direction, you're trying to pinpoint which ones might actually sit down with you and not automatically call you a fascist land stripper. Yeah. If you are, an evil oil company. And so what Josh Simons then tweets about at the beginning of this month is that, and this is really weird, and he's going to have to stand this up at some point, is he said, we had been hacked and we asked APCO to investigate. I don't know of any scenario in the world where you have a hack and you call a PR firm.
Company. You call a cybersecurity firm. Of course you do.
And then if you find that you have been hacked in some way and you are a politically affiliated organisation, then, you go to GCHQ.
Well, I tell you when you would go to a PR company, when there's something that's in that hack that you wouldn't want getting out to the press, or you have to go into emergency.
No, what you then do is, you call in a cybersecurity company, the cybersecurity says, yes, you were hacked.
Yes.
We are taking it to GCHQ, at which point you call a PR firm to say, by the way, we were hacked.
That's right.
You don't call in a PR firm to investigate the concept of a hack.
Exactly.
And you don't call one in to just produce produced a dossier of apparently some really, really bad Googling. And having said that, power to APCO for billing 36 grand for it. My goodness, in terms of money for old rope, man, you guys have put the rest of us to shame. I wish I could behave this way, but I absolutely cannot. And I think that what's going to be fascinating in the next couple of days is sort of this concept that they have in US law of the fruit of the poisonous tree. Like, is everything that flows down from an original poisonous moment? Because all these guys were part of the Starmer project. They were all part of the get a moderate elected at the lead head of Labour.
Labour sort of.
Not even New Labour, just like rehash post-Corbyn Labour. And, you know, that became Project Starmer, and that Morgan McSweeney was the big driving force behind that. And it's not necessarily about how much did he know, but also how much were they hiding from him, and therefore he should have known and did not, and all of it flows from poor leadership on his part. So actually it doesn't matter if he knew or not, because he should have known, and if he didn't, that's as bad as if he knew and sanctioned it.
Should he have if he did know, Keir Starmer, is that something that he should have reprimanded
pretty quickly?
Reprimanded them, got rid of them?
Absolutely.
Maybe told the press that, you know.
Everybody involved in this is a political communicator. If you yourself are having to hire a political communications firm, you are not a good political communicator.
Well, this is
Stop blowing 36 grand on APCO.
Sebastian, regardless of all the semantics around this, and I do think I struggle to see a defence for Labour together here on this one, but I'm sure they will refute that and they will say they were innocent in all doing. Politicians are now famously being held to account for utilising information, and we've actually seen this in the authorities as well. The police got misled by a fake AI report, which is why led to some two-tier policing in the West Midlands. What is it that the British public expect better of their politicians, just to do some due diligence, or is this sort of, here, I've got a dossier here, why don't you go and smear these journalists for us? Is this sort of gutter politics actually just the style of the Labour Party and other political parties now?
Well, I think a really important point is that none of these people at the time were politicians. Granted, they've gone on to become them, and I hate briefing. I hate this kind of backroom activity in Westminster. It is just an unfortunate byproduct of the environment that exists there, and it always will in any political environment. So I would always advise politicians to stay away from this kind of behaviour. My warning will not be heeded. Of course it won't be. But I think that goes across all parties. It is just in the nucleus of political behaviour to do things like this.
Yeah, because you've got 2,000 egomaniacs in one postcode.
And Adam, you know, the Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, who, of course, this is not connected to him as far as we know. However, once again, people around him are being pulled into question. He is trusting these people almost seemingly blindly, which, again, the judgment question, it comes back again.
Terrible judgment. And that has been uncovered over and over again. Look, I must say, I would never hire this guy to defend me in court.
It's meant to be a forensic Prime Minister.
He's the least forensic person that I think I've ever seen in politics. The fact that that was his nickname is laughable.
Well, that's presumably why they're trying to delete the courts database, so we can't go into his prosecutorial record and work out what he was and wasn't asking.
I think that's a claim Mr McVeigh had made at some point in time. I can't remember where she said
telling,
it. But that's it. Of course, I mean, we don't know whether that's the actual reason. I'm sure the government would refute that claim.
Obviously.
But look, I just think it is an egregious attack on journalists, these poor journalists who had their name dragged through the mud for no good reason because some people couldn't do the basic due diligence to check a report that they paid 30-something grand for was in any way, shape or form accurate.
But what's hilarious is the end product of this is Westminster has not spent the last 5 years believing that Gabriel Pogrund and Harry York did something wrong and hacked and leaked and were in Russia's pay, right? They haven't gone through the last 5 years believing that. They've gone through the last 5 years believing that Labour together failed in their electoral due diligence in a massive way.
That's true. They still win at the end of it.
Which means that this 36 grand bought them precisely nothing.
OK. All right, well, listen, Alison Phillips, now head of Labour Together, said the group was ready to support the PRCA and other relevant governance bodies with its review of this issue. APCO did not respond to requests for comment. Labour MP Josh Simon said APCO had betrayed beyond its brief, strayed indeed beyond its brief. He said, I was surprised and shocked to read the report extended beyond the contract by including unnecessary information on Gabriel Pogrund. I asked for this information to be removed before passing the report on to GCHQ. He said he welcomed the investigation launched last week by the Public Relations and Communications Association.